BetOnline has the Pittsburgh Steelers as a 3-point favorite against the Lions in the preseason finale for Saturday. And BetOnline.ag is the presenting sponsor of today's Bleav in Steelers show. If you want to get in on the action, use our promo code Bleav. That's BLEAV. You can see that on your screen right now over at BetOnline.ag. BetOnline, the game starts here. Now to our interview with Ian Eagle. Welcome into the Bleav in Steelers show. I'm Mark Bergin. Joined today by the voice of the NFL on CBS. You can also hear him, the voice of the Final Four, Ian Eagle. Ian, I was listening to one of our previous shows. You tried to warn me. Ike and I were in Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. You tried to warn me about the shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo Steakhouse. But welcome into Bleav in Steelers. It's good to see you.
I think that there's a natural tendency to downplay it, that people think, no, it's not. It's not that spicy. I can handle it. It's real. It's real. My man, Mark May, my first game at CBS, could not handle the fire. He was not prepared. So I've seen it. I've seen it up close. He had to get up and exit the table to recover.
It's something. It's something. And the good thing for me is like it went away. That heat dissipates pretty quickly, but it'll put hair on your chest.
Yeah, I could open up my shirt right now and show you the results. Yes.
You've been with the NFL on CBS for a long, long time, Ian. What I want to ask you, the Steelers have had a lot of quarterback turn over the quarterback room entirely. You got Russell Wilson, Justin Fields going into this season. I remember we asked you when Ben Roethlisberger retired what it's like for you as an announcer. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields at the helm for the Pittsburgh Steelers. What's that like for you? Because it's like, I cannot believe Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky are all on other teams entering this season.
I feel like in the NFL, it's pretty straightforward. You have a certain amount of teams that join one classification, which is they've got the quarterback down pat. They know who their guy is. They either did it through the draft, did it through a trade, did it through free agency, but they made an organizational decision that this is the direction they're going in. As we know, there are times where teams get lucky and fortunate. And in the case of the San Francisco 49ers, I'm not sure that was the plan at all, but Brock Purdy turned out to be the guy. Then you have a list of teams that are not in that category. It's a mystery. And the Steelers obviously are a part of that group. You just don't know. You don't know what direction this is going to take. You don't know if it's going to be a positive. You don't know if it's going to be hanging over their head the entire season. They obviously rolled the dice this offseason, hoping that there might be a little something left for Russell Wilson, or that they're hitting the Fields business at the right time with the right coaching and the right surrounding pieces and the right culture. So many things have to go right for you to feel really good about the quarterback position. And the Steelers right now, you don't know. And that's an uncomfortable place to be in, because you could feel really positive about what you've done in other rooms in your facility, other position groups. But if that quarterback position is not taken care of, that will continue to be the headline week in and week out. I think the turnover for the Steelers, I can't remember a time in all my years of doing the NFL on CBS where I've seen more roster turnover for a Pittsburgh team than this year. Omar Khan made a lot of changes, and clearly they're trying to change the trajectory of this organization. But it does start at QB, and here we are getting ready for the regular season. We just don't know how it's going to play out.
I'm with you there, and I'm going to piggyback off this because the Steelers fans are frustrated with the lack of playoff success in recent history. You've got to go back to January of 2017 from your last playoff game. My pushback has always been, who's been the Steelers quarterback? And you had Ben at the end of a Hall of Fame career, but really Roethlisberger, since then you've been in a bit of what I'll call quarterback purgatory.
Fair, very fair. And we could go example by example around the NFL and see which teams have sustained success and which teams have been either a flash in the pan because they put it together for 1 year, or have not been a playoff contender because of that one position. So it means so much. It's the most important position in sports. I'm not trying to be over dramatic, but it is. It's the most important position in sports. And if you don't feel like you're covered in that area, Steeler fans were not accustomed to this because of Ben Roethlisberger. You just wrote in credibility. Whether or not you won the Super Bowl, that requires so many other storylines for us to analyze. But to be competitive, to be a contender, to be credible week in and week out, you got to have the QB.
And you've met with a lot of players, a lot of coaches. Mike Tomlin entering his 18th season with the Steelers. At this point, I'm sure there's a lot of things that you bring up year in and year out. What are those conversations like behind the scenes when you meet with the players and coaches before a broadcast?
I think I've told you before, among the coaches that we deal with, there is no one better at that part of the job than Mike Tomlin. He is open. He is direct. He tells you basically as you get started, ask me whatever you want. He comes from the philosophy of there are no tough questions, only tough answers. So Mike is very transparent in those meetings. If he doesn't want to deal with something, he won't, and he'll be honest about that. But it's rare that we ever get to that place. But that's also based on many, many years of meeting with him and the frequency in which we do it, and also the dynamic, the interpersonal skills and the familiarity. The fact of the matter is there is a trust factor that comes into those meetings for players and for coaches. If they see broadcasters over and over again, I do think there's a comfort level that comes with that. Or there's maybe an experience or interaction or moment that takes the relationship in a different direction, sometimes not in a positive way if things are perceived in a certain manner. Or what ends up happening, which I've noticed, is it's almost like a game of telephone. Oftentimes the players don't watch the game with the sound on after the fact, but family members do and friends do, and they'll get a text that night or the next day detailing how somebody took a shot at them or something was misperceived. So we've dealt with those. It's all part of the deal. Obviously, been doing this job a long time, and your credibility means a lot, and your reputation means a great deal when you're working these games. For Mike Tomlin, no topic is off limits. He's someone that is very much an open book in those sit-down production meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And he's got a new offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith coming over for the Falcons. Obviously, a lot of experience as the offensive coordinator in Tennessee. What do you expect his role to be with the Steelers in trying to get this offense back right for the 2024 season?
Expect a lot of play action more than anything else. Look at what Atlanta did in that category compared to what Pittsburgh had been doing under Matt Canada. That is an area where I believe Arthur Smith thinks the offense should start, where you're not giving anything away. There are options off the line of scrimmage, and you're forcing the defense to make some decisions early so you can potentially take advantage of whether it's timing, matchup. Look, we don't know exactly who's going to be running the offense, and they bring different things to the table. Russell Wilson last year, if you look at the numbers for Russell, he really did listen to Sean Payton. He did limit his mistakes. He had some large mistakes at times and at bad moments in games, but the numbers would tell you that he did listen to what Sean Payton was preaching. It just didn't translate into consistent wins. And then look, the dynamic part of what Russell brought to the field for so many years as a member of the Seahawks, it just wasn't quite there. Everything was off just a beat. So when he used to be able to avoid, escape, and make something happen, now you would see maybe the avoid, but not quite the escape, or the avoid the escape and then an incomplete pass down the field, or a bounce towards a receiver as opposed to a clean connection. For Fields, called a few of his games. There are dynamic moments. There's no denying the highlight, because he can create that real game in and game out. The questions with Fields have been, in the big moment, will he deliver? Will he deliver the game-winning play? Will he manage and command the offense? And we just don't know that. Even after all his time in Chicago, we can't answer that question yet. The early answers have been no. But it doesn't mean, in the right system, with the right players and the right coaching and the right culture, that can't turn around. We've seen many impressive second acts in the NFL. There is no doubting his raw talent and ability. And now it's a question of putting it all together and doing it in a way that leads to winning football.
You mentioned the play action pass in the very first preseason game, probably the Steelers' best offensive play. It's a play action from Fields to Van Jefferson down the field. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, where has this been with this offense for several years now? And that's where, when going back to last year, you fire Matt Canada midseason. Well, the Steelers hadn't fired a coordinator or a head coach since 1941 midseason. You got to go back to the World War II era.
Yeah, that was building, as we know, not just last year, but in previous seasons as well. Sometimes it's just not the right fit. And I think, based on so many circumstances, the end of Ben Roethlisberger's career, the ushering in of a new era, the fact that the quarterback position was still very much a work in progress, it didn't feel like a good fit with Pickett, with Canada, with the system, with trust. The defense had certainly done a good enough job for this team to continue to be in the playoff mix. The fact that this team was still finishing with the record that they finished with is often something that we discuss in regards to Mike Tomlin, that even in the adverse circumstances, that he finds ways to win. But it wasn't translating into being a real honest contender in the AFC. And that's ultimately what your goal is. To be middle of the pack in professional sports means that you're not doing enough to actually contend, and you're not doing enough to get a really good draft pick. So you're just stuck in the middle. And that's what it's felt like for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the last several years. So the hope is that a new philosophy offensively. Arthur Smith did do terrific things in Tennessee. There were moments in Atlanta as the head coach. There's no doubt he's got a creative offensive mind. He's going to go at it from a different angle than when Matt Canada was doing. And we have to also keep in mind, this is for the good and the bad, by the way. Preseason, we can overreact in a positive manner. When you've got a couple of starters in there going against the opponent's number 2 defensive players, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. And then you can react in a negative manner where you don't really get a whole lot going. Meanwhile, most teams are going as vanilla as possible. They want nothing on tape to give anything away for that regular season opener. That's what all of this is leading to: winning your first week, not winning your first, second, or third preseason game. So I've learned a long time ago not to necessarily take what we're seeing in the preseason and automatically assume it's going to spill over into the regular season. That's for the plus side, and that's for the negative side. So if there's any solace that Steelers fans can take out of this preseason, is that one may have absolutely nothing to do with the other.
It's like a war reenactment. And I stole this analogy from my guy, Dave Damashek. It looks like the real thing. It feels like the real thing. It is not the real thing.
No. And it's by design in many ways. And there's a reason why I think the NFL is seriously pondering changing up the scheduling going to 18 regular season games, 2 preseason games. We just feel this major shift in the preseason of most coaches, and it's a generational thing. Just because you did something in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s or the aughts doesn't mean that you're going to do it the same way in modern times. But the shift is real, where those joint practices have taken on a much larger scope of importance than the preseason games. And for the NFL, which prides itself on the games meaning so much, every regular season game takes on so much meaning and importance because of where it fits into the grand scheme of the regular season and the playoff picture. To have these preseason games that don't have that same general vibe and feeling is something the NFL is trying to address. It's not a simple solution. The games are not exactly well attended, and you don't know most of the names that are participating because the rosters are so large, and the cut down day is now after the third preseason game. It used to be you would get a little bit of a roster cut down with each week that went by. So then you were forced to maybe play some guys in the last preseason game that were going to make your team, and that would be potentially even a factor on your team. And now that's not the case. You're going to see a lot of second, third, fourth stringers on that third preseason game. So yes, it looks like it. It sounds like it. It feels like it a little bit, but it isn't quite it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And it's an inevitability that it moves to 18 games, Ian. Here's my thought process, right? Like, I look at Nielsen ratings, and we've had Lee Steinberg, the legendary agent, represents Patrick Mahomes on. I think it was something like 92 or 93 of the top 100 watched broadcasts last year were the NFL. So that shows me all I need to know about this country's fascination with not just football, not just college football, but the NFL. Now, with the Olympics, I'm curious to see if 2024 is going to be the same way. But for the last 3 seasons, that number has increased. We've seen the NFL go after Christmas Day. The Steelers are playing the Chiefs on Christmas Day this year. And the question I have is when you move to an 18-game regular season, this is kind of more rhetorical, but are you going after Labor Day as well, which has always traditionally been reserved for college football? Do you move the season up? Do you move it back? To me, it's an inevitability that you move to 18 games, and it makes a lot of sense for a lot of the reasons you also outlined for why we'll see the regular season schedule expand.
Yeah, I think the NFL is very interested in doing that. I also think they want the Players Association to be on board. They don't want to do this with the Players Association not accepting of the circumstances as to why. And that requires some deeper conversations and a deeper understanding. Obviously, there are finances involved as well. That's one more game per season. And while we can say, well, it's the same number, it's the same pool between preseason and regular season, we understand that it's a longer haul for the players. And we're already in that bye week setup. Do we have to go to a second bye? Is there a way of giving these players a break at some point? The last thing you want if you're the NFL is for head coaches to adopt the load management theory and then treat one of their regular season games like a throwaway because they know they've got to keep their guys healthy over an 18-game season. They've avoided that, as we know. Other sports have not, and it's become a hot button issue. The part for scheduling, it would shock me for them to go earlier. I think if anything, they're going later, and they're going into President's Day, and they're looking at the Super Bowl being the Sunday before President's Day, and then you've got a national holiday on Monday, which
I love it.
A lot of people already are getting behind if they can look at that Sunday as, oh, wait a second, I have nowhere to be Monday morning. I can just enjoy myself and cut loose and not think about all the stuff piling up on my desk or in my laptop for the next day. that to me seems much more realistic than moving it up a week. And I do think they like the current structure, which is final preseason game. You don't turn around and start your regular season right away. You have that final preseason game. And it's almost like you have a bye week baked in. You've got that week off for everyone to reload, get your roster set, and now be rejuvenated as you start the regular season.
All right. There's two more things I want to ask you, and I'll make sure I get to both of them. So I want to ask you about this. When I've got the best of the business, your pop culture references when you're announcing Travis Kelce, blank space in the end zone. Does this come off the top of the head? Is this something that you think about before going into a broadcast?
So the timing of that, they're playing Jacksonville. That's the week that rumors surfaced that Kelce and Taylor Swift might be seeing one another, might be the early stages of a relationship, but it was not full blown at that point by any stretch. There were no Taylor Swift sightings. If anything, they were just talking at that point, at least publicly. So I thought to myself, all right, if something happens here with Kelce, I might be able to slip something in that enough of the audience will get. I certainly did not think that it was going to connect in that manner. And to be perfectly honest, the way in which I delivered it on the touchdown, that was only based on if Travis Kelce scored a touchdown and it's in the flow of the action. I did not have a specific line picked out. I just knew and was cognizant that there might be an opening. So I go for it. I bake it into the call. So I didn't make it seem as if it was something completely different. If you are not familiar with Taylor Swift and you heard that touchdown call, I don't think you would even question it. It just would be part of the call. So my phone starts buzzing very rapidly after the call. And Charles Davis gives me a high five. Charles is a bigger Swiftie than I am. He had seen her in concert that summer. But that was it. We said nothing else. And I just see the text messages rolling in. And I'm not talking about, I got 10 text messages. I'm talking about hundreds. I thought to myself, what is going on? Now I'm still locked in. You're calling the rest of the game. So game ends. We get in the car. We head over to the airport. We had some time to kill. And we ended up going into the airport club together as a group, our production team. And somebody on our team at that point is on their phone and looks up and he says, Ian. I said, yeah. He goes, you're on TMZ. I said, what? I quickly scroll over. The call is on TMZ, and then the thing just exploded. Adam Schefter tweeted it, and I think that got the ball rolling as well. And then it was unreal. The next few days, there were pictures. I could send you a picture that I have saved on my phone of Kelce and Swift and me in the middle. I found it to be among the most comical things that have ever happened in my life. It's pretty bizarre and hilarious. And then obviously the relationship really did take off.
Of course.
So I like to think that
you manifested it.
I played a rather small role in this union.
See, I'm a Seinfeld fan. My favorite reference you've made was the real and spectacular Joe Johnson game winner. And they had a shot of Seinfeld for it couldn't even have been a full second. It was like half of a frame. And I know you're doing the game with Greg Anthony. That's my favorite call that you have as someone who's a huge Seinfeld fan.
Yeah, I've worked in a few Seinfeld references through the years. That one in particular, we had showed Jerry early in the game, and that was it. And now the game winner hits. Our director, John Wilson, ends up going through a litany of shots after the game winner. And then Jerry pops in, and that was the first thing that just popped into my head. Greg Anthony, who does consume a lot of television, a lot, was not a Seinfeld watcher. So that that reference went completely over his head, although he agreed. I said, that was real and that was spectacular. And Greg said, yes, it was. But he just viewed it as a call, which is very funny. After the game, I said to him, you a Seinfeld guy? He's like, no, never saw the show.
Before I let you go, Ian, I just want to say this. Your son, Noah, during the Paris Olympics, the golden dagger call with Steph Curry's brilliance in the final against France. Got to be a proud dad, but he was terrific with his play-by-play alongside Dwayne Wade. Really, really enjoyed listening to him throughout the Olympics with his basketball coverage. And he learned from the best. So I think that's a testament to you, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned that too. I really, really enjoyed listening to him throughout this summer when we normally have that lull period from the dog days of summer to baseball, like do anything to get us to football season. I thought he was spectacular.
Mark, I was on a darkness retreat for 2 weeks, so I missed the whole thing. I'm not even sure what you're alluding to. The Olympics? No, it was fantastic.
Ian, where were you when he made that call in the finale? Where were you watching?
Watching in my home, my wife downstairs, I was upstairs because I had so much nervous energy. I was basically doing laps around the house. And I think it was a combination of how close the game was and then the fact that it was my son calling the game. And I don't get nervous for me. I've done this so long now. I have anticipation when I do these games as a broadcaster, and you've put in all this work and you've put on all this time and effort and you want to deliver and you want to do well in your job. But I can't say that I have nervousness on a personal level. There's nervousness as a parent because I have no say on that. It's whatever comes out of his mouth in the moment. So yeah, really proud. It was thrilling for our family, and my wife and I just, I don't know, looked at each other 100 times over the course of the 2 weeks when Noah was calling men's and women's action, and thought to ourselves, how did this possibly happen? A lot of pride. You know, we obviously changed this guy's diapers quite a bit as recently as 2 weeks ago. That's what makes it so troubling.
That's Ian Eagle. You can hear him, the NFL on CBS this fall. Ian, I hope the burner's still going strong.
Oh yeah, I'm locked in, ready for the season. I know this is normally my rite of passage when you and I speak. I Bleav it's 4 years in a row now that the summer is officially over. The fall is here, and that means football season, and hopefully that means a few games in Pittsburgh where I always enjoy my time. So all the best, Mark. Appreciate it.
Ian, thank you for your time today. He's Ian Eagle. I'm Mark Bergin. Thanks for watching another edition of the Bleav in Steelers show. I'll see you later this week previewing Steelers and Lions preseason finale. Until then, take care. So long, everybody.